So where and when were you born? Each of you, whoever wants to go first.
I was born in Chico, California.
Oh, wow.
1969, March 16th.
So is that Aries?
Pisces.
Pisces. Oh, so your birthday's coming up. Happy early birthday.
Al's birthday was yesterday.
And that's Pisces too.
Yep.
So do you Pisces tend to, they're the two fishes, they're sensitive, they're intuitive, they can feel pulled in different directions. Is that descriptive of you at all or no?
Yeah.
Very sensitive, probably more empathetic than one has to be careful of because you find yourself wanting to be the fixer. And so when you have two Pisces, everything is constantly trying to be fixed. You really have to step back and realize that it's really not about you, and my job isn't to make you happy or to fix what's wrong. My job is to hold my space and show my highest good and integrity and hope that it reflects on something else for another person instead of trying to fix it all, especially with kids. Because you always want to fix your kids.
Interesting. Tim, where and when were you born?
Alvin.
Alvin, where did I get Tim? No wonder you looked at me funny.
You can edit that. No, we always say we're the two forests of the creatures because I'm Robin a bird and he's Alvin the
Chipmunk. I was born in Chico too in 1967 in Low Hospital. We were both born in Low Hospital, and grew up in Durham. Been here all my life.
And then, what was your career education path? Did you go to Chico State, both of you? What was your?
I went to Butte for a semester, and then I became a machinist on my own, and that's what I did for the most part of my working career.
What does a machinist do? They make machines?
Well, you basically there's a lot of metal involved. As far as the company I worked for was making mostly these industrial pumps. They would pump up mostly oil products. So, yeah.
Robin, what about you?
I went to Butte for 2 years and decided what I wanted to major in wasn't my path. I ended up being an event coordinator manager for a cosmetic company and traveled about and put on events and drove a team and, gathered them, excited them, worked cohesively with them and did that until I got pregnant and we were married in 1990. I got pregnant in 1999 and gave birth to our first child in 2000, 1100.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were married for 10 years before we had our first kid.
Was that a plan or that it just happened that way?
We tried. I was ready to get pregnant the first year we were married. I've been mommying everything my whole life. And it just happened to be that it wasn't in the cards for us. It was 3 surgeries later and a lot of hormone treatment before we conceived Alexandra.
And then how many kids did you have after Alexandra?
We just have 2, a boy and a girl.
Perfect.
Yep.
Can't beat that. What are they doing now? How old are they and what are they up to?
Well, Alexandra was born 1100, so you can guess that she turned 21 January 1st. She's finishing up her doula certification. That's her path at this time. Caden will be 19 in June. He is with the CCC right now, completing his high school diploma and working 40 hours of work with the CCC and volunteers 10 hours a month. I'm out at Kirshner, and after which he finishes his year contract with the CCC, he will then move out to college with a scholarship to get his heavy equipment license.
So he'll go to Butte like his mama and papa. Interesting. Did you ever have the feeling of, I want to live in New York City or Paris or Chico?
Africa, Egypt, I've always been very captivated by. Visiting, never really wanted to live there. No, neither one of us could ever live in the city. We would if we had to. We would accept it. But no, we like to be out in the boondocks, clean air, clean water. Plus I don't like animals. So that wouldn't work in New York City.
What animals do you have now?
Well, standard, we always have horses, dogs, chickens, ducks, cats.
Oh, wow.
And my daughter and I've been a volunteer since, 1979 with Rivendell Wildlife Sanctuary. So we take in injured and orphaned wildlife, anywhere from a raccoon to a deer to a coyote to a possum to a squirrel to a raptor, and rehabilitate them to be reintroduced into their natural habitat. So I have circles, incoming, outgoing, weird creatures all the time. We just moved a possum out of our front room like 2 weeks ago. So
A friend of mine has 2 possum babies who lives in Chico. They hold them in their armpit or their
their pouch.
their pouch. Well, then how did you two meet?
Well, we crossed paths. You saw me for the first time, so why don't you go ahead? Because I didn't remember this, but he told the story. I'm like, oh yeah, I was there. So
I don't know, which time was that?
it was in 1986, up Highway 32, where all the
we first
kids
met up at
go to
a
parties.
party.
Up Highway. Well, in the 80s, you'd go up Highway 32, and that's
They
where
have a big party.
That's where we party.
Does that mean stand by your car and drink beer?
Yep.
That's pretty
And
close.
put on some speakers and dance, maybe?
Loud music. And, yeah.
And so you
Oh,
met at
okay.
Uh-huh.
one of those?
Yeah.
Well, he remembers. We were not introduced, but that's where he first saw me.
And then we met each other.
We kept
during
crossing
the
paths
washout
at parties. The trestle, bar
Little here
party.
and there.
It was always at a party, though.
party. And then we, what was the washout?
Oh, the final
And then since
destination.
we actually, he called me the next day.
Yeah, he flirted with me at that washout. I had,
You were
God.
tubing on the Sacramento River for people who
Yeah.
don't know
Oh,
Chico?
yeah.
Okay.
I was riding a jet ski, and I was kind of dating a guy, but I wasn't intimately serious with him. And he definitely caught my eye. I'd always thought he was handsome.
Mm.
In fact, a couple parties previous, I tried to hook him up with my girlfriend because I thought he was such a catch, but that didn't happen. And we flirted back and forth, and then I got the gumption up to Colin and took him for a ride in my Land Cruiser across a bumpy field, and it was on.
That was it.
How did you get his phone number?
A friend of mine was really good friends with a girl that was dating one of his friends, and I just got the courage up to call him. It was July 15th, 1989, and that was the first time we ever kissed. And a month and 3 days later, we were married.
Oh.
So it was pretty well destiny.
What attracted you to each other besides the fact that you are both good looking? What else was going on?
That's probably 90% of it, but I do just remember Robin being a little flirt, and there was just it's to me it's not something you can really explain. Something attraction draws you.
It's funny, we can look back now and dissect it. I think at the time we were both oblivious as to why it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
But 31 plus years later, personally for me, and I know Alvin will probably agree, first of all, I think you do have a destiny, and you choose ahead of time without knowing it, and sometimes you suffer through this role, but it's part of your journey and your destiny. You choose a mate for certain factors, because you're going to play this role, whether it be a victim or someone who's going to provide security or insecurity. Somehow we subconsciously choose that partner to help fulfill this role we signed up for. We look back at it now and we can see the unfolding of why, because we've been through it all.
It's done a lot of everything.
Wow.
Let's not go down that road. But we've been through some muddy roads, and it's been challenging. And you don't always, your expectations are always not met. But yet,
That's part of
if you
your
don't
lesson, though.
question where your expectations come from, if you can't enjoy, like you say, if you don't have enough rainy days, it's hard to enjoy the sunny ones.
True.
So there's always a
The crappiest mud fields usually end up blooming the prettiest flowers. You know?
True.
But I think, just to interject here, not to interrupt anything, I think above all, you choose these roles. Ahead of time, your destiny is clearly cut out. How you ebb and flow through it is one thing, but I think no matter what anyone says, and this goes forward to your question about what marriage is about and should it be romantic and this and that. I don't care what anyone says. If you don't have chemistry and you don't have that primal, there's something in you that lines you up with a mate for survival reasons, or maybe you have certain genes in you. You pick a mate for some reason. There is a chemistry involved, and there's a pheromone crossfire that occurs where people wear perfume and cologne and all these synthetic things actually confuses our receptors to how we're supposed to choose a mate. So that's, when someone thinks their body odor is bad, well, honestly, if your chemistry is lined up, you're going to actually kind of like that body odor, and you match, and you're attracted to each other. So I think there has to be that romance and all of this stuff. Sounds good, but physically, you have to be chemistry lined up to actually withstand the long haul of all the chaos of life and our culture's conditioning. You have to be mated that way, because you're not going to make it otherwise.
They've done studies they take men's T-shirts and have women smell them and see which they like and which they don't like. And I think it kind of matched up partly with the woman's cycle. Like she liked different smells at ovulation than
Right.
not or something. So there really is evidence for this pheromone thing.
Sure.
What about the challenges? You said you had some doozies. Let's hear them.
Well, one was a challenge. I mean, gosh, we could pluck anything pretty much out of the sky. Not being able to conceive a child and going through hormone therapy. He had 2 surgeries. I had a surgery. Watching all my friends either give birth or have an abortion while I couldn't make a baby. And we wanted one really bad. So there's one. Adultery. We've been down that road. We've had deceit and not being honest with each other, and learning humility, learning not to blame, and not allowing someone else to have the keys to your happiness, because it's really not my partner's job to make me happy. His job is to hold his space.
I think that's one of the biggest things that people don't get. You made me feel this way in the beginning.
It's your fault.
Now, why don't I feel this way anymore?
You didn't do this, or you did that. I could be happy if you didn't do this.
The blame could never end.
It just goes on and
And
on.
if you can't really step back and, like Robin was saying, be what you wish to attract into your life. Pay more attention to what you're doing instead of what they're doing. Now, if you can both do that at the same time, it can be a real beautiful thing. But it's so difficult to keep from that on. And I think we talked about this a little earlier on Saturday about the way we're raised. About, this is just old hat. How about we throw this away and we get a new one, and then it'll all be fresh and new and everything. But majority of those people find the same problems with that new relationship because they haven't changed their viewpoint. They haven't changed their perspective on what part they need to play. Pay more attention to what you're doing. What are you bringing to the relationship instead of what that other person. But again, you need that other person to say, I want to bring the best of me to this relationship so we can mirror each other with just kind of a blissful feeling. I mean, if we're both in charge of our own feelings, our own contentment, as soon as you add these keys and say, here's you take charge of my happiness, the sadness goes with it. So now we run this roller coaster ride of happiness and sadness, which most people run. And instead just say, hey, stop this. I got to focus on me. What am I bringing to this relationship? So it's kind of totally ass backwards from a lot of the way we're raised.
It sounds like you both believe in karma and reincarnation, that we are spirits.
You get what you give.
You get what you get.
Yep.
Be as you wish to attract.
It's huge. It's much bigger than we realize.
So,
we don't really pay attention to it in most people. Most people say, what am I getting out of this? In most cases, you're just watching them going, instead of being truly appreciating all the abundance in your life. and all the beauty in your life. Instead, so much of the time we just want more.
So if your spirits said before you were born, okay, we have lessons to help each other with, maybe some unfinished karma, Alvin and Robin, what would you say over the 31 years, what have those lessons been? What it sounds like one of them is that you're responsible for yourself and not fixing the other person. What would you say are the karmic lessons that you've learned or are learning?
Just that.
Karma from a past life, or karma that I've experienced my own doing in this 52 years that I've been alive? Are you talking about a past life karma? Because karma can unload on a future generation that has no clue why this is happening to them. But how you react to what's occurring is how you navigate through life's up and downs. Because it's happening doesn't necessarily mean you personally brought this on yourself, but you still have control over how you flow down that little river.
How you react or not react.
Right. So,
That's
Robin,
challenge.
what have you learned from being with Alvin? What are some of the lessons that you learned? If your spirit was saying, okay, this is a really great opportunity to learn, blah blah.
It is not about me. All is well. This is one of my favorite breathwork techniques. And there is a higher purpose, and I am listening. Just because something occurs or you don't understand it doesn't mean that it's not a part of who you are or where you come from. And so I would say not having children. Why was that happening to me? What did I do to deserve not to have children? I was always very good to myself. I was very good to children. I cared for animals. Why can't I have my own baby? Why is my friend on her third abortion? It's like, where's the karma there? How come she keeps getting pregnant? And so I can see the little, not understanding why it's happening, but just that it is a part of
Accepting.
It is a part of my role to play in this. Maybe it's happening because something else happened in my past life, or maybe my ancestor's life. It somehow trickles through.
Or maybe that's just the whole idea that baby's going to show up exactly on time. So, having us thinking it's really a lot to do with what we do or we don't do, so often is just step back and realize all the beauty. There's so much that we're missing in so many people's lives. They're not awake enough to realize what's really occurring.
So, Alvin, what have you learned from being married to Robin for 31 years?
I think the whole idea of truth, truly seen, being honest with yourself about what's occurring through this journey, just the whole of that right there. It's not, a lot of it isn't up to me. I have a lot of dreams throughout my life that had come true. I mean, even years earlier.
Many dreams.
Prophetic dreams.
More than most people.
When I was
visions or dreams or whatever.
12, I had a dream my parents got a divorce, and I lived with my father. When I was 17, this occurred. Exactly how my dream had, set
Tell
up.
her about the dream when you were in Arizona with your blonde girlfriend.
I had moved to Arizona with a girlfriend.
That you were crazy about.
Well, I moved there for her. So, but Sunday morning, I wake up and I have this dream that I moved back to California and I'm dating a petite brunette. That is as close as I could come up with. But that was in January. By July 15th, we were dating that same year. So
why did you leave the Arizona woman?
Well, it was a lot of different circumstances, but it wasn't working. Just wasn't working.
It was a cycle
relationship. 30 days.
You guys went through the cycle a lot.
She was much older than me, but I thought, I was in love and everything was moving forward. It just didn't work there. And this city was just not where I could I spent a month there and I knew this isn't for me.
There's your New York question.
Right. By cycle, Robin, what do you mean? You mean that there's typical patterns in relationships?
I would say so, especially in a young or not even young age-wise, a young relationship.
A new, yes.
I think you hit certain cycles, but until you're really conscious and present enough and aware of your own behavior and that there is no one else responsible for your happiness or unhappiness, you will sign up for someone to play a role, and you play a role, the victim, the
and the
fight,
same
the
thing, the
breakup,
roller coaster ride,
the kissing,
continues.
the making up, or whatever, or leaving a job and starting a new job. It's like you have to see the pattern and recognize it, and not have blame or shame, because guilt is one of the lowest vibration frequencies you can possibly experience, guilt and shame. But to step far enough back to see that you can break the cycle by making a choice to serve your highest good in a relationship or by yourself. Or the job.
Then from there on, it's just a lot of not reacting.
That's true.
But the cycle is you're infatuated, and then those hormones of dopamine or whatever it is, then they wear off.
Some people get excited about a fight. They get the adrenaline rush, and then pretty soon
Then we
they
get to make up.
can't have the makeup sex that's so great without having a fight.
So that's an example of a cycle that is pretty destructive.
Well, yeah, that's just
I would say that's an unhealthy cycle.
Right.
But maybe that's, again, these are all things that led you down the road of where you are today.
It's true.
And I think that's the trick of life, is to eventually truly appreciate where you are, instead of looking, oh, it looks so much better over there, or truly stepping back and appreciating all the gifts of where you're at instead of
You
searching
do
for more.
have to thank the crappy times, because if you didn't have them, you would not have ended up where you are today. You would have taken a different course. This is an example, and this was a very humiliating example for me. Losing downtown my storefront when I lost my health and couldn't sleep and suffered from severe sleep deprivation and then pure insomnia and then went crazy, literally 5150 checked in to Stanford. Having all of that chaos and all of that suffering and all of that humility would have never drugged my family into the mud. I would have never got to watch my family wash me off and hug me and take me to a meadow of flowers and say, Mama, it's okay. You were muddy. This happens. And having that humility, that terrible experience, I would have never got to see all of the beauty. Chico literally picked me up in the scoop of their hands. Mm-hmm. GoFundMe paid for all of my alternative sleep therapy Chico paid for that, not insurance. Mm. Chico Sweet Cottage supporters did that. My family held my hand and guarded me in my house for 3 months because I wouldn't leave because I wasn't right. And I would have never got that experience and that love and that community had I not been in the mud.
So for people who have sleep deprivation and anxiety, as kind of an end note, what worked to get you back to healthy mental state and being able to sleep and whatever?
It's a multitude of factors. It took an entire community, first of all.
Takes a village.
One amazing family, including my Nana and both my children and this beautiful man. But I think that you shouldn't get there in the first place. If I'd been honoring my body, eating the healthy foods I was doing before I opened the storefront, doing my yoga like I was before I opened the storefront, riding my horse.
The adrenaline and the stress is what just continues to wear on you when you're that over. You're just pushing your body more than you should, and most 90% of it was up there. You just couldn't do enough.
Well, once you have lack of sleep, everything goes haywire. Your hormones are off.
The doctor explained it to me like this, where eventually when your adrenaline is just running on full tilt, your body stops understanding how to shut that down because you're just running it all the time.
Right.
So eventually you just get those 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and then body's going, no, we got to go. And you get into that cycle, and eventually you're just not commuting properly.
But back to the healing part of that lack of sleep, just for I really hope anyone who's listening to this that is suffering from a lack of sleep.
I know
On
people.
a level, you think 6 hours is good enough? Guess what? It's not. Okay. I ran on 5 hours, 6 hours for a year. Then it dwindles to 4. You think you can handle it? No. There's a certain amount of REM that you have to have so that your body can make the hormones it needs to function for every organ in your body. Okay. So you can't lose the sleep. If you're there, you need to really.
Nothing else is important. Get sleep.
You really need to question your diet, okay, your food intake.
Exercise.
You need to question your spiritual time, your meditation time, your time of learning to be quietness. You need to learn enough about yourself to know where your body feels the endorphin excess. For me, I had to learn, oh, that's right, I am Pisces. I was told through my therapy from one of my naturopathics, every day, Robin, I don't care how you're feeling, you're going to get up, you're going to go walk in the creek. I want your feet in the creek. If you can't get to the creek, you're going to be in a puddle. If you can't get to a puddle, you turn the sprinklers on the lawn. You have to be in water every day. And I still wasn't sleeping enough. They said, go back to your most peaceful time, which was my childhood. My parents still own my childhood home. I was told for a week to go sleep in my own childhood bed with the window open, listen to the creek, and train your body that you're back there and you're safe and you're okay and you're allowed to sleep because you're not an adult now, you're a child.
Brilliant.
You go back to this safe place. So between that, changing my nutrition, starting my yoga, my meditation, taking magnesium,
and time. There was
and it was 6 months before it really, and it's still up until what's it been? Almost 4 years? 4 years? 17? Yeah, 4 years. Probably I was in repair for 2 years before I felt a 360-degree turn.
I have a friend who is going through something similar. Went to the doctor who said take Ambien and Zoloft.
I took Ambien and I had the polar opposite reaction, and that's what put me into the pure insomnia. I was already having sleep depression. My body wouldn't sleep for 72 hours because of Ambien. It's not worth it.
Have they had any luck with Ambien?
No. Some, but not. They can't sleep through this.
Exercise is huge.
Because it releases endorphins.
Yes.
Dopamine
and then your body's going to want to shut down because it needs that rest. Exercise is so important.
But people think they're going to go running today and they're going to sleep good tonight. It's over time. And nutrition, magnesium. We don't get the minerals and the nutrients out of most of our food that is offered to.
And put your phone down and stop watching the news and things. They're just different practices.
Alvin doesn't even own a phone.
I don't either.
Good for you. Good for you.
I would if I traveled a lot on the highways or something for work, but then you need one. But I work at home, so.
There's a frequency wavelength that goes through that is very interfering with our body's harmony and our health. All of it.
And constantly going, I better check my messages because it's addictive. And, I got to check my messages. And I don't want that in my life.
Too much information for our little brain.
What bothers me is to go to like Caper Acres and see usually the moms, the parents with the kids, and the parents are looking at their phone, not at the kids.
Not engaging with their kids.
So that's why I don't like them.
At a dinner table, and all the kids or the adults, they're not talking, they're texting across the table. Who does that?
That's really sad. Let's go back to the affair, because that can really ruin a relationship. How did whoever or both get into it, and how did you resolve it?
Well, there was not a lot, I would say, not excessively, because overall we were pretty happy, but as the years went on, little things kept coming up of insecurities, blame, guilt, shame, guilting to get what I want out of something. So as a result of our conditioned behavior, because we learned from our parents.
That was my part of it. I was guilting out of guilt.
So
not knowing anything else.
When you're feeling shame and guilt and blame, you try to find ways to make yourself feel better or enough, and you end up making a poor choice. In our case, I was the one that committed adultery out of years of just guilt and not feeling like I was good enough,
and me giving you the idea that you weren't good
right.
enough.
And when we went through that, and when I decided to change my past, I had to own it, and I needed to be honest about it. So years after it happened, it came out into the open, and we went to Harbin Hot Springs to seek some guidance. Got in with the wrong counselor about yelling and screaming to release this and that and heal. That was very unsuccessful, but we met a man named Nirikar, best spiritual guide of our life, changed our life. Like, what a gift he was.
Very much.
Handed us The Power of Now, which I highly recommend everybody read, and The New Earth.
At least
By Tolle. Eckhart Tolle, however you say his name.
Yes.
Eckhart Tolle.
So,
Speaking of
With
phones.
Yes.
once we started going down that path, we had many sessions with him one-on-one. We learned that there is no blame. There's no guilt that belongs here. It's the lowest vibrational frequency that you could possibly subject yourself to.
With that.
And you don't have to say that you don't need to forgive someone, because it's already, there is no forgiveness needed.
Well, it's understanding that to every degree, and this is what Nirikar first told me, and it was there. I changed my perspective. And there was a point where, have you ever deceived? And that's exactly what he asked me, because I let him know what had occurred and how am I going to get through this. And that was his question. Honestly, have you ever deceived? And I couldn't deny that. There were times in my lives I deceived. And he says, well, there's nothing to forgive, because you know how it feels. And you know this human part of us either wants to be this or that, so we're deceiving. Then we understand what that person is, so there's no forgiveness left. It's all compassion for each other. So you stop blaming. A sin is a sin, regardless of what occurs. Then you start really realizing, what are you bringing to this relationship? Because if all you're bringing is blame and guilt and all of this stuff, you're never going to get there. You need to bring what you wish to attract from this relationship. So bring your best without these other ideas to get what you think you need.
Plus the learning of not making someone else responsible for your happiness or unhappiness,
so
and not feeling responsible for their happiness or unhappiness. It's actually a great relief, because you can just be in your space of happiness, and just because you didn't fold your laundry or or put the toilet seat down doesn't mean you're causing my unhappiness. It's how I accept this. Lack of acceptance and lack of allowing to be what is doesn't mean you have to be in it because you don't like it. You can move away from it, but you don't have to be angry at it.
You have to react.
The reaction.
I have to use the restroom.
The reaction is our biggest obstacle, because then there's just constant reaction going on. It's just back. It's just like playing tennis after that. It'll never resolve what is occurring. But to have that compassion, because throughout your life you've done things you wish you wouldn't have, and said things you wish you wouldn't have. So fully accepting that, the responsibility that you
are
on, instead of thinking, oh no, I'm good. No, everybody has done things they wish they wouldn't have. So that compassion, and then the blame falls away. Like Nirikar said, there's no reason for that.
How far into the marriage did the affair happen? How many years?
Oh, it was way before we had kids. So there was a lot of things occurring during that time of that 10 years.
It didn't come out until our son was 2, which made it extra hard, because here's 2 parents that want to show their children security and love by example, and not angry, and we love each other. We want our kids to watch us hug and kiss, not fight or scream and yell, because that makes them feel very insecure. And then as a child,
it came out at the most challenging time, probably.
It absolutely did.
How did it come out? Why did it come out?
I had a friend behaving a certain way that pulled some stunts, my husband, and I saw it, and I asked myself,
Yeah.
I've been already going through some personal therapy and digging in deep for myself. I've been doing yoga and meditation and really looking into why I was feeling so shameful. And I wanted to confess to Alvin. And then I questioned myself, was it to relieve my own guilt? Do I want to make him suffer and have pain to make me feel better and free of my guilt? So I toyed with that, but then when that happened and I saw her, my first reaction was like, attack! I'm gonna run your neck, and how could you do this? And then I was like, whoa, she's me. Whoa, that is me. And I was like, I can't even be
so
mad.
close to home.
I couldn't be mad at my friend. I was like, I went up her, I wanted to hug her. And I'm like, thank you for letting me look in the mirror, because now I forgive you, I forgive myself, and I'll let Alvin decide how much suffering he wants to take for this. And also, Nirkar brought to light that he was just as much a part of that occurring, even though he's not the one that did that I did. He was a part of the evolution to get to where that had occurred.
And that's something Alvin had to own too, because I did not treat her the way I would have wished to be treated. And it was a lot of blame and guilt and demand of what I felt husband.
Plus, I was raised in a very strict Christian family. I went all through Chico Christian School and was under the Bible's pressure and how you were supposed to perform a wife's duties. And, you do this no matter what, how much it hurts or whatever it takes for you to please your man. I had this conditioning over my head, which is very unhelpful in a marriage. That's not how you approach a marriage. You approach it together.
We're all doing this for the first time, so we're all just kind of, oh, okay. And we only have our parents to go off of, and
or your
it's a
society.
totally different generation, and what we're going through in this time frame of where we're at.
Our kids actually barely felt a bump in the road. In fact, my son doesn't remember because he was so little. My daughter remembers a little tension, but she doesn't ever remember a feeling of fear or lack. Because I've confided in my children. They both know everything. Because I want to be honest with them. They know about my stupid drunk high
Hiding
school,
this stuff is a
college
bunch of
days.
silliness.
They know about that.
We need to be as honest as we can. Truth is really so important in your life for you. If you can't be genuinely honest, how can other people be honest with you?
Or your kids. You want your kids to tell you the truth of where they were last night? Well, you better have been honest with them about what you did in your stupid dumb days. Because then they won't feel so much shame or judgment.
So I don't understand what the guilt and shame was about. Was it just about not being able to get pregnant, or what? What was?
No, it was about how much Alvin figured we had to have sex per week. It was probably that idea of what that was supposed to be.
Or that I didn't initiate it enough, or enjoy it enough.
I always had to initiate, and there was always
and
that.
then having the pressure of my childhood and my parents telling me the role of a wife, it wasn't helping me because I couldn't be honest about. I had severe endometriosis.
You had some other physical issues too that were
caused
making it
uncomfortable.
Right.
That I wasn't being honest about because I thought it was me not being a good wife. So there's a whole bunch of factors as to where it ended up where it was.
And then how did you resolve it? Like the sex?
It was. We can't give enough credit to Nirkar, and then truly changing that perspective on how a relationship actually is. The whole idea as we were growing up from this young little age, we're only getting, for the most part, maybe one couple that you're getting an example off of. And so often you take those roles on because the only roles you know. And
That's why I'm writing this book.
You see my point? And that is, I think, it can be a big hindrance. Like I said, my parents got a divorce when I was 17, and there's still a tremendous amount of triggers that they live with.
Here's a karma thing, not to bring this back up, but it's funny because when Alvin went through that as a child, it was very painful for him.
Yeah.
And he swore that if he ever had a wife that did what his mother did, that would be it. And he signed up that he'd commit to that. So, but when the pony show came to town, you had to change your perception because wow, we didn't really.
Wait a second, is this really what is showing up?
We weren't willing to walk away. We were still in love with each other, madly in love. We just didn't like each other at the time. And so at near car, and if it hadn't been for him, I do believe in my heart it would have gone a different way.
Probably would have went the other way.
He sent us back to our corners, to our infant embryo-ness, helped us come back through and unlearn all of this incorrect way of being, because you can't truly be in the now, and you can't truly unconditionally love and accept until you just be as you wish to attract.
Yeah. Do unto others.
Don't react. You need to, oh, is that so? Type of thing.
It's relearning. Relearning.
Did that answer your question?
It's relearning, educating yourself on what a relationship is supposed to be, and it's definitely, for what I see out there, is ass backwards from what most couples understand that marriage relationship to be.
Because they think it's Hollywood and you get married and live happily ever after, because the books all end with, and they lived happily ever after. So you don't see what it's like to have a baby wake you up every 3 hours around the clock. Or
the divorce is a quick fix and it's okay to do it and suddenly just throw in the towel and start anew because the new will be better. Well, you're going to end up...
It will be in the beginning.
Well, sure. You're always going to end up in that cycle. It's when you finally either unlearn enough or learn enough, you can actually make the journey without having to start over. You get to go all the way around. Instead of getting to here and coming back, going to here and coming back. Guess what? Finally, we feel we made full circle. In fact, in the last 4 or 5 years, we're like, what did we do? What have we done to deserve this great
relationship? We're really at peace.
We're so into each other, and I ask myself, how can I be so attracted to someone after being with them for 31 and a half years? How can I still be crazy and crave him?
And what's the answer to that?
Did we suffer enough? And finally, he said, here's the cherry on the cake, because you ate enough of the crappy stuff. You finally, I don't know what it is.
It's appreciation, I think, more than anything. Again, stepping back, and I remember this one. I remember being kind of stating, how about we just, this is what is. We've gone through all of that. Can we truly start being genuinely kind to one another? And I mean that. That is, again, being truthful and honest with yourself. Is this the way I want to be treated? So you treat accordingly to how you wish to be treated. And yeah, it is a lot of non-reaction. And the blame. It is so amazing how often you will blame other people for the way you feel. And you did that. You know, you make me feel this way. And just that needs to be retrained. You stop that blame game.
There's no one factor that we can put into why. There's so many factors.
I read a really interesting, I'm reading all these marriage books in preparation for this book, and this one guy said something that really made me think. He said, you're not going to be bored if you talk about your feelings. If you try to stay kind of on the surface and not be offensive or whatever, then it gets boring. But if you're genuinely relating from your emotional center, then you're not bored.
Yeah, you have to be honest.
There's
no deceit, because deceit is the beginning of failure. You have to communicate, okay? Because if you're not talking about what's going on in your head, who's going to know? And thirdly, the being as you wish to attract, which goes back to a tool, which I advise everyone, either in a marriage or a workplace, especially raising crazy teenagers, okay? Well, crazy teenager, because we only have one, is that nonviolent communication course. Learn how to use your words without pointing a finger or pushing shame or blame.
Or pushing reaction, like, I'm going to say this and then they're going to react. And you can start feeling that little ego in you that really just so desperately needs to be right.
Your body language and your choice of verbal deliverance
is huge.
Is a world of difference on how, and we didn't really recognize it in our marriage. We only recognized it when our son turned 14, and it was crazy hard. Everybody was reacting. Negative, and there were fights, and we're talking physical, drag you into the car, taking you to school fights, and it got so ugly. I just went deep and like, I need some tools here, because I don't know what to do. I can't ground him. I could never spank him. None of that ever worked. And I don't believe in spankings. I don't believe in physical contact.
And then taking the breaks. When you get too high,
When you
like
get to
the
red,
temperature just goes way, way too
we
high,
need to separate
we all need to step back.
and breathe.
Yeah.
Recenter, so you can choose your words more compassionately. And
So you don't do and say things you wish you wouldn't have.
And
So
NVC
non-violent.
really emphasizes getting to the person's need. You're doing this because you need da-da-da, you're afraid of da-da-da. So is that what you get from MVC?
Well, I would think it mostly goes back to when there's a conflict, it's important for both sides to share their feelings without blame. And of course, the younger child is going to blame you for everything because they're so young, their little minds, that's just what they do for survival mode. But as an adult, it's your job, and it took me a long time to get this, and it was over an evolution of many engaging conflicts with my son, learning to hold my space, not reacting. And he'll keep coming at me, but I'm going to hold the space of love. I'm here. I feel this way when this occurs. Not, you make me feel this way because of your actions. This feeling is arising in me when this occurs. There's no you or me. It just...
blame.
Right. And then if they still continue to explode, say, at this moment, we're both going to take some space and breathe a little bit until you can choose your feelings of expression in your words more kindly. And I mean, it took a long time. And sometimes I didn't do it right. And
We
I
did it this morning. Did it this morning. It's time for us to take a break, and we both realized it. And it's so beautiful when you can go away and really use that time to just let that go away. That energy within you that is mostly just defense.
So that's a part of one of
defending
Gail's questions as to how do you resolve issues. Yours was like, what was the list? Money, kids, what you do different
In-laws,
times. Yeah.
housework.
This morning was about our 19-year-old son making really poor choices and us trying to not react, allow him to experience his own suffering consequences without fixing it for him, but holding the space that we still love you. We're not angry with you, and we don't want to shame you, but you have to deal with these consequences. This is your problem.
Your choices.
And we're here to love you and give you that guidance, but we're not going to fix this for you, and you're not going to yell at us for not fixing it for you.
But what if he
And then we
says,
started to get a little heated with each other, and finally we're just like, we're not mad at each other.
Stop
Let's
it.
just stop.
but that all assumes that the teenager is willing to play that game. But what if they're just like, screw you, I'm going to kick a hole in the wall and run away or
Well,
what?
then the window that got shattered in the front door got paid for out of his allowance or his college tuition or wherever I got to pull
Accepting
from.
the consequences.
Right.
And it doesn't always work. But with Caden, it has.
He's
it has
been very
given him
receptive.
a tool. And he does use it
He
quite
does.
often.
He knows
He
his.
just needs to
He
step
knows
back.
when he hits red, Mom, I need to go breathe. I can't talk
He's
to you
willing
right
to give
now.
himself that.
And
Wow.
he does it. And in the beginning, it was hard for me to let him be the one to walk away because I'm the adult here. I get to walk away. No, I had to let him have that. You know what? I'm very proud of you. Let's take a breather. You let me know when you're ready, and I'll be here holding my space.
So it's a relearning. It's a relearning of how to interact.
Well,
Yeah,
so-
because
No,
our
I-
parents would get the air paddle out of the belt, and that was
just
then it was over. There was no talking about
and
it.
that's what we know. That's what we know. It's difficult not to do what you know, regardless of it. If you think that it's the best way to act, that's what you know, so you do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so in the incident of getting Caden in the car to go to school, if he's no, I won't, I don't want to go to school, what worked to get him to go to school without a big fight?
We
Well,
let
we
it
tried.
go.
Well, we leave him at
He's
home.
doing it right now through CCC because he was not
He
willing to
didn't wanna go
stick
to school.
through. We just said, but it's
Well,
good.
let's go back.
These are things you're going to have to deal with.
Our kids went to public school. Allie went for 2 years. Kate went for a year. Didn't want to do the vaccination thing. Had all kinds of my personal issues with the public school system. How, they weren't allowed to hug or touch. I mean, there was a whole list of things that I wasn't into. So I homeschooled my kids until they were in 8th grade. And I gave them the option to continue homeschooling or to go to a charter school. My daughter chose a charter school. fit in, everything clicked,
Good
but
for
that worked for her. Not for Kaden. Why did you ever pull me out of school? I'm not smart enough like the kids. I can't do the math that they do. And it was just this huge, I hate school, blame, and I'm as stupid as I am because you took me out of school. And then so we put him in a charter school that he could do online. Never would do his work. It was just a constant fight.
It was times. There were times he was sticking to it, but then there was times he wasn't. So, again, it came down to where he is today.
And we just backed off. You don't want to go to school? Not everybody needs a high school diploma. I highly recommend it.
You're going to have to figure it out.
But this is your journey. And so we let him, and he had his chores, his responsibilities, and what he was allowed to do and not until he turned 18.
And now he's
And then when he turned 18, he did research, found the CCC. The kid is a hard worker. He can run a backhoe. He can run a tractor. He can chainsaw a tree down. He can build a doghouse. He can fix a Land Cruiser. But he doesn't like schoolwork. So he does 40 hours CCC running a chainsaw, 20 hours a week for his high school diploma, and that was all his choice. He made the commitment. He's seeing it.
It was his idea.
It was his idea.
Brilliant. That's what it takes.
Kind of the kid he is.
Getting ourselves out of the way was really hard. Because where I grew up, you went to school until you graduated, and that was the way it was. There were no choices.
Right. Alvin, what did you learn from your parents? Robin learned to conform to traditional norms. What did you learn before they divorced when you were 17?
When my parents were together, it was pretty strict in the house, and my mom was very, this is the way it is. And Dad would always enforce that, of course. My father was very, this is the way it's going to be done. And so, yeah, it was challenging, but again, it was the world I knew, and it was the world I was growing up in. So, my dad wouldn't take. There wasn't a lot of childness with him. He was
very little compassion or empathy.
Yeah, he was pretty. He was a Marine.
Oh.
So we were raised with a little bit of that mentality in our house. It was 3 boys, and so Mom was kind of outvoted a lot of the times. So when she finally said, "I'm out of here" at that age, and at 17, so I had the 2 last years of high school living with my father. So my father was kind of at that time, it was a
bachelor house.
He was being a bachelor, and so it kind of just turned into that because it was just him and me. So I had a lot of fun my last 2 years. I can't deny that because he was just like, well, don't get in trouble, and I did a little bit, but it was just a totally changed the whole environment for the last 2 years. And then I had a lot to learn as a teenager and growing up, and that's a lot of what Caden's going through right now. So a lot of that's coming back on me, and even Saturdays, some things occurred. So I just hug my dad a lot more than I used to, and I appreciate both my parents a lot more because they did put up.
No matter what, like even though we look back at
the
experiences that we occurred because of the way our parents brought us up, you know what? My parents did the best they could.
That's right. No blame again.
What they had to do with the tools they had, and I knew everything that they did, even though it might not have been the most compassionate or spiritual or whatever way you want to label it. They were doing what they did with the tools they had and how they learned. And everything my parents did, even the negative stuff, was out of love. It always
At least
was.
they thought it was at the time.
Their intention
was all in good intentions. Yes.
Alvin, were you the youngest of the 3?
I was.
Robin, what about your birth order?
It's funny, he's the 3rd boy and I'm the 3rd girl.
Interesting.
Here's some serendipitous stuff. Not that this has anything to do with it, but it's kind of cute as far as like destiny goes. So he was born in 1967. I was born in 1969. We were married in 1990. His great-grandfather?
My great-grandparents.
Okay. He was born in 1867. She was born in 1869, and they were married in 1890.
Wow, that's interesting.
Very interesting.
I don't know. It's just bizarre.
We don't have the months, but we do have the dates of the year. And this was back in, 100 years?
100 years ago, same years of birth and same year of marriage.
Yeah.
That's back to your point, Robin, of ancestral shadows.
We really know very little. We really do. If we can step back and be honest with ourselves about what's occurring here and all the little
influences,
interesting things that thrown in.
You may not have control over your destiny, but I full-heartedly believe the way you can navigate through the journey is up to you.
Yeah, we have free will.
Yep.
We do.
Yep. And how you ebb and flow through the ups and downs and the shit and the flowers, you can bleep that, but it is all a part of where you end up. And, I mean, had we not gone through, he got Lyme disease when I conceived Alexandra, had we not gone through that health issue, we would have never been going to Harbin for hydrotherapy for his Lyme. We would have never met Narikar when the marital problems came up. Okay? Had we not done that, we would have never learned Wim Hof breath work to increase our health and to bring vibrance. Now we do Wim Hof together for intimacy. So y'all that are married, here's a newlywed piece of advice. You want to hold your intimacy and grow together, do Wim Hof together.
Together.
How do you spell it? W-I-M?
Oh, goodness sakes, I'm a terrible speller. I think it's W-I-M-H-O-F, but don't quote me on that. Oh my gosh, I feel terrible.
I'm sure if you Googled it, it'd come
That's
right
Wim
up.
Hof breath work.
And you do it during sex as well.
No,
I do it every day.
we do it every morning.
We wake up in the morning.
First, solo. But before intimacy, if we do hydrotherapy, we do hot cold, like hot plunge, cold plunge. Then we'll do breath work. Whether we're together and holding hands or we're 5 feet apart or
The
whatever.
aliveness.
By the time you get to your intimacy, your oxygen levels are so high, your awareness is so high, you can connect to this vibrate frequency that you are maybe not aware that is even there, but your body just does it. And wow, talk about the electricity. Woo!
That's
Right?
good to know.
Agree.
So yeah.
Very much so.
How do you, to get back to the mundane, how do you organize housework, cooking, bill paying, all the
Not
roommate stuff?
Our problem probably is, our biggest fallback is we're both physically really hard workers. And both of us would rather go out and, mow the lawn and straighten the yard or fold the laundry or scrape the
Whatever
dog
it
poo
takes.
off the sidewalk rather than organizing paperwork. So we're really bad at keeping our paper in order. Physically, we don't really have a problem in this house. Stuff is always done. I get up in the morning, I cook, I clean. He's outside working on construction or whatnot.
We're in the midst of getting a house ready for the market too. So this is what we're in transition of a move right now to Montana. So this is kind of all on the forethought.
So you're
Right.
you're gonna sell the house you live in.
Yeah.
We already sold 3 of our properties that are around us. They close escrow April 1st, and our farmhouse will go up for sale probably in June.
Why Montana?
We took a trip up there this summer and
For
it
our
was the
30-year wedding anniversary.
most amazing trip we'd
Just
ever
hot
been on.
springing. That's all we were doing. Just hot. He built a little gypsy camper for the back of our truck, and we just wanted to hit the road. And
So we just hopped from hot spring to up to Montana, and then we came back the same way. We stopped in a little town called Hot Springs, Montana, and we were there 3 days and fell in love with it and said, we need to do this.
made an offer on a parcel. Happened so perfectly. It just was meant to be. And we want cleaner air and cleaner water. We're watching all of the wells around our house go dry.
There's so much ag going around
Dozens of
us.
wells.
It's just
We already lost our ag well.
Are you in Chico or Durham?
We're in a little town called Kirkwood,
Kirkwood?
outside about 5 miles.
Between Orland and Corning
Yeah.
and Capay.
Mm.
It's a little you blink, you miss it community. The only thing left in the Kirkwood town is a kindergarten through 8th grade 4-room school.
What about doing a business together? How does that work? Because you have Sweet Cottage that you both do.
That was an accident. That was not
kept
planned.
us together. I probably did more than anything. It was we had to rely on each other for this because neither one of us could do it all. So we had to both come together.
I actually started Sweet Cottage as a hobby. because I just wanted a little extra. I love getting clothes at the Cat's Meow for my kids, and I couldn't afford it. So I thought if I sold slices of berry and apple pie on Thursday night, I can buy all these great little things. That's all it was supposed to be. But we were in the middle of a housing crisis, 2008. We had 8 rentals we lost through the housing crash. And Sweet Cottage was a hobby, but yet as we lost foreclosure, short sale, Sweet Cottage was a little more popular. Suddenly I was making more pies. Suddenly we were making jam. Suddenly it was him and I doing it together. Saved our primary residence. We lost all of our investments, all of our 401k. We lost it all. But those pies, those silly little pies,
kept us going
and made us work together. So we're really good hard workers. We can rise to the occasion. We might have a few heated discussions in the kitchen on occasion, but for the most part, we get in, we get it done. We hug each other at the end of the day and say thank you.
It's a coming together.
A great partner.
It's a compromise.
How many pies do you average making a week?
That's an unfair question. Because you'd have to take, is it a regular farmer's market week? Is it a holiday farmer's market? Yeah. I mean, Thanksgiving, the max we've ever done was 500 pies, which I'll never do again. Last year we did 300. This year we did close to that. I don't want to make that many pies. We just did it.
Probably another reason why Montana sounds really good to us, because we've done that a long time now, and we're
so grateful though. I have so much of Sweet Cottage in my heart. It literally held the family together, and I was able to homeschool my kids because I had a home business.
Right.
I was able to be with my family doing laundry or schoolwork in between pie runs. It just all fit. It was the universe saying, this is where you need to be. This is what you're going to do. And we did it.
Do you have a special kitchen with big...
We have a commercial kitchen that we do the baking out of. When I started it, that's the way it had to be. Now they have something called a Cottage Kitchen Act, and you can bake out of your home.
Yeah, I heard.
Anyone who wants to start a baking business because they love food, you can do that, which I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you go someplace else out of your home to bake?
Yeah, I don't bake in my personal house.
No.
That would be crazy.
But as you say, it would be nice to, this batch is in the oven, I'm going to do the laundry.
That is true. That's one of the reasons why when I moved to Montana, I started a new company called the Pickled Fairies Pantry. And I can do it all by myself in my own personal kitchen on the Kitchen Cottage Act and just do canned goods, pickles and jams and chutneys and marmalades. And so I will do that. We ended up doing pie because it's just, I loved it and I clearly have a passion for it. And the community really stepped up and literally raised this family. The Chico's Farmers Market patrons supported my family and helped me.
So, yeah.
And back to the Stanford thing when I had insomnia and went 5150, Chico, my health coverage would only give me temazepam and Seroquel and friggin' Ambien. That wasn't going to heal me. That was going to put a Band-Aid on with a ton of other terrible reactions.
Right.
Chico's GoFundMe paid for all of my acupuncture, my physical therapy, my psychiatrist, my walks through water, my supplements, all of it. Thank you, Chico, for loving my pies because they gave that back to me.
That is beautiful. So, if there is a conflict now, how do you resolve it? You may say, I need to take a break, or do you not have conflicts after 31 years?
Goodness sakes, yes we do.
They're much fewer than they once were.
Because we don't react to
That's
each
right.
other.
And the blame. That it's so important that you, within yourself, you acknowledge that idea to blame, to fix things by blaming someone else. Eventually that habit doesn't happen.
Your reaction just doesn't get revved up like it used to. Maybe Alvin did or didn't do something that might have left me frustrated, but I won't put my bad feeling on him. I don't say, you did this and I'm mad at you. I'll just be like, wow, I'm really frustrated because this didn't occur, but that's really not Alvin's fault. I'm frustrated with the situation. It's not his fault that I don't like it. And what really pushes that challenge is when you are raising wild teenager together, because then there was conflict this morning, and we really had to step back from each other And I looked at him,
It's
because
not
the
us.
voices were going up, and I was like, I know you're not yelling at me, but yelling in this situation is making me feel really uncomfortable, and I want to react. Don't want to react. So we're either going to step away and breathe, or we're going to lower our voices, because I need that. And we did.
So it's just kind of it's kind of all, that's the reaction, is to step back.
Maybe we don't notice the conflicts because we just don't react to them.
They don't escalate.
So many less, yeah. And again, it's just retraining that idea of non-blame, and the whole, the energy in the words you say, really big.
My words say. Or in fact, for years and years, we stopped saying the word "I love you." It was really weird. My family was freaked out. We would say, "You are love."
You are love.
There is no "I love you." You are love, or "I feel love."
It's acknowledging it instead of the personal of me, of I. It's just totally acknowledging that other person without you involved.
Some couples do date nights or have little couple rituals to keep the romance going. It sounds like you do. Hot
We don't have
springs.
date night. In fact, this is a funny little one. I'm always saying, one of these nights, it could be once or twice a year, I would like to get dressed up like the olden days and actually do my hair and makeup, because I don't really even do my hair and makeup. I put a hat on, or I put my hair up, and I wear whatever feels comfortable, and I very rarely put makeup on my face. But it would be kind of fun to get dressed up and go out. Alvin's like, no, that would be such a waste of money, and we could go to the hot spring together and spend all that money. And so that does tend to be our treat to each other. We do hot spring, and we both enjoy it, and so that would probably, and even when we can't hot spring, we have 2 clawfoot tubs for his hydrotherapy in the back. We'll call it a hot spring at home night, and we'll just light candles and pretend we're at the hot springs and use our hot cold and come in the house. Very rarely have an empty house.
That's our date night. That we at least try to make it to the hot springs probably once a month or more often.
When we live in Montana, we can walk to 6 different hot springs.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So to kind of sum it all up, if you were giving advice, say your daughter was going to get married.
Which she is engaged.
Oh, wow. Let's say she asks, Mom and Dad, you're so happy. What advice would you give me so I can have such as happy a marriage? How would you sum it up for her?
That's funny you say that, because our good friend Baba comes to our house often, and one day he sat down and asked my kids, and I was mortified. I was like, oh, well, what are they going to say? He asked my children, what have you learned that you like and don't like from your parents' marriage?
Great question.
And I was like, what are they going to say? Like, oh, so reflective of me. Am I a bad parent or not? Have I not done what
Here we are, spotlight.
And so I just sat there and watched and on. And Alexandra had said that what she didn't like that she had learned, because she knew of all the honesty I had shared with her about our marriage and tribulations, was that to always be honest. She didn't like that she saw that we were dishonest and deceived each other. And then the thing that she said that she liked the most was that we are both willing to compromise, to give and to take, and to hold the space of something that is important to me. And I really can't bend on this, but I will bend on this because I care enough about you that I'm going to give a little. There is a bending, a compromise. You have in all walks of life. And so she plucked the words right out of my mouth.
What did Caden say?
I don't think Caden was in the room.
Caden, I don't think he got to reply. It was Alexandra that did.
I think Al is the one.
And if he did, I feel terrible that I don't remember.
Well, we'll have to ask him. That'd be a good question.
Yeah.
So that great. Anything else that we haven't?
If it was me to give them advice, there's a statement in the New Earth that when I get frustrated, when I get into places where the frustration overwhelms you, and just through life issues, it can be a multitude of
work
different things.
thing or
But
marriage thing.
there's a part in the New Earth that says the secret to happiness. And I'll just give you a generic idea of part of it. It's a whole page of stating why I can't be at peace now. I can't be at peace because you did this. I can't be at peace because this occurred. If you wouldn't have done this, I could be at peace. It just goes on and all the examples of why I can't be at peace now. And for most people, their life is this, all these reasons why I can't be at peace. That's the first place to start. Stop that idea of these things. They are all in charge of my contentment. And of course, with that goes the idea of all these things are in charge of my unhappiness. So to look at that and then start from there with the relationship. You bring what you want to the relationship. Pay more attention to what you do than that other person. And if both people can do that, it can just be a big, beautiful rainbow.
Communication and honesty.
And be very alert on your own thoughts first.
You know, this makes me think of, I read a study where therapists said to like couples who are in conflict, just tell your partner positive things that you like about them. Just try that for a week. And there were big transformations that happened just by reinforcing the positive and not bringing up the negative.
Exactly. Focus on the things you really appreciate in this relationship that other person cannot do. But focusing on all the things that you really don't like about it, it can be brought up, but it's not the conflict that blame is involved. It's so important that we see that. The responsibility is up to you about your decision on happiness. And I mean, it's been shown so many times, things don't make you happy.
But what if you leave your wet towel in the bathroom all the time? And it really bothers me. And I say, please hang up your towel. I don't want to be picking up your wet towel. They get all moldy, please. And they don't do it. So I mean, there are situations like that are irritating.
You do need to communicate the things that bother you. And I suppose if you were really playing the role of being as you wish to attract, the person would do something to try to avoid that suffering that they...
Without anger. And it's bringing that. Can we have this conversation? And are you bringing what you want from this relationship? Are you bringing this? Are you doing what you would have...
And if they don't change, you have to decide how important that wet towel is. You know? I mean, for me personally, it's so much easier. Just, of course, I have a house full of kids right now. So much easier for me to just pick it up and just put it in the dirty laundry. But you know, there is a point in time comes where like, I kind of feel like I'm getting a little run over.
But again, that comes back to the idea: are you being honest with yourself about what you're bringing? Would you appreciate that if you continue to throw that on the floor? So really, when people aren't doing that, it's an honesty within themselves. So if we can't truly be kind to one another, then what are we doing here?
Or maybe you could say something like this. You know, I noticed you leave the towel on the floor. Is there something I can do for you that would help you pick that up? You know, maybe I won't have any more dry towels on the table for you anymore. You'll have to walk to the dryer. No, you know, it's give and take. And
compromise.
Acceptance. Honestly.
Appreciation too. When you like what you were saying, point out what you appreciate in that person on a consistent basis. And I think that can be consistent back and forth. It can do miracles in a relationship.
It's behavior modification. You reinforce the good.
Yes, and why wouldn't you want to help that other person have less things to do in the house?
It seems to me the bottom line, though, is both people have to be willing to communicate, compromise, make changes. And if one person is...
It's one-sided.
Nope.
You can't row a boat with one oar.
Well, it's
It's
difficult.
going to go in circles. No, well,
There's that roller coaster ride. I'm happy, I'm sad. I'm
but
happy,
say you
I'm
have
sad.
one oar and it's on one side of the boat, you're just going to keep the cycle. It's never going to, you're never going to go to the horizon. You both have to be engaged. Either that, or guess what? If it's such a terrible cycle and no one else is picking up the oar, you're going to do both oars. You're going to just leave because that's
And
what
that
ends up
occurs
happening.
too. That occurs too. But we must
I need to write
remember.
that scenario down. I've never
We
heard
must
that.
remember that and I think this is something we saw. I know. I was a parent of it through the '80s because a lot of things changed in 1978. There wasn't a whole lot of divorcees that I went to school with, like kids that had divorced parents. And by 1983, half of our high school was divorced.
Wow.
And it was just abnormal. It was a normal thing in that school.
You
So
know why
it's just
that
like,
occurred, though.
well, there's a lot of different reasons.
There was a
but
big movement in Hollywood sustaining the idea that divorce was better, and
Divorce was
honestly, it was
acceptable.
about the lucrativeness of commerce. Because guess what? Society generates more money if there's 2 houses, 2 electric bills,
Wow.
2 washing machines, 2 refrigerators.
Yeah.
So they wanted to push that idea. There's been studies and investigation to support
Well, again-
Hollywood's presentation that divorce is the in thing. And don't work on this anymore. Just start a new one.
Get a new one.
Can you
Yeah.
think of a movie that illustrated that from the
One
80s?
day at a time.
Well, that was a sitcom, but
But,
yes.
okay, yeah.
Very
One
much
day at a time
so.
was an ongoing sitcom.
There was a lot of movies about
Mel's
divorces
Diner?
through the early '80s. If you really pay attention, you can see how it was brought into the idea of being acceptable. In 1975, divorce was very much looked down on, and by the '80s, it was more acceptable. And you saw what occurred throughout. When you live in that, you're not acknowledging it. You're just living through it. But when you really get further down the road, you look back and go, "Wow, that's kind of interesting." The commerce overtook the country, and more turn of dollars is all this capitalistic society, for the most part, looks towards. We judge this country of how many dollars we can turn in a general year. I just don't think it's a good basis for relationships when you look at it from profit and loss statement. Tough.
Not to say that if you're in an unhealthy relationship that divorce isn't the right choice, because
It
I have
can.
seen many scenarios where it really was the healthiest choice. I'm just saying probably more times than not, maybe if both people were willing to return to a place of presence and consciousness and really brought to the table kindness and
What they
unjudging,
wish of the
they
relationship.
probably would have a more successful relationship. Not just in a marriage, but with your kids or your coworkers. It all goes in the same.
Remember how much you truly cared about that person when you first got together. This can be just a reflecting point because we get lost in the mix otherwise because, dang, there's just so many people being cruel to themselves. They say, "I love you," until the circumstances change, and then I hate you. This is not what we should be doing. And you really cared for that person at one time in your life. How about you land back there for whatever reason? How much more can we get from that on an individual basis instead of just trying to hurt them?
Did we answer all of her questions?
Yeah, but tell me about Mirakar. Did he write, like, if other people want to learn from him, did he write any books or articles, or is
No,
it?
but he handed me the power of now. He did. He says, "Listen, you need to be just retrain your thought about a relationship in itself." And I think if you really go into both those books, the New Earth as well as the Power of Now, and then practice those. Practice it.
There's a whole bunch of things that would be a factor in gaining that presence and consciousness, because you could read the book and maybe get the concept, but you kind of have to live the life. And I think a part of that is nutrition. We need to feed our bodies better. We need to avoid unhealthy processed foods. We need to avoid chaos and overstimuli.
Exercise.
So it isn't just reading those words and being that way. You need to engage in a higher self attempt, serving the highest purpose of your body. And gaining that health gives you more clarity, allowing yourself to meditate and stretch and breathe, to do the breath work, gives you much stronger foundation so that when you do engage in a relationship, you're going to hold your space so much better and so much stronger and more beautiful. There are going to be less ups and downs. You're going to hit your destiny, but the way you go around that rock could be with a friggin' hammer and chisel, or guess what? You could just kind of go over it.
Like water.
I wish Nir Carr had wrote a book.
And it wasn't just one thing, but
he did body work on us too, like a lot of physical body work, moving, and we would lay there and he'd have you just watch your breath. There's nothing to do, nothing to say, just breathe.
Just breathe, yeah.
Really taught us how to be in our body and not in our headspace.
And I think we were to the point where I know where I was, and it was pretty hopeless at the time.
I think we'd suffered enough. We were really ready.
So we were ready for a different viewpoint to show up. So it's just, there's so many different things that led us down this road to where we're actually, we really like each other now more than we ever have, to say that.
All right.